Hello, I'm Emily, and there's a burden on my heart that I've kept inside for far too long. Before you draw any conclusions about me, I encourage you to listen to my story. Never did I foresee that I would end up in such a situation, and I still struggle to comprehend the astonishing pace at which everything transpired. A haunting memory remains, one that my husband urged me to accept, forever changing the course of my life. The journey began several years ago. My husband Brian and I have enjoyed almost 10 years of marriage together. Like many couples, we navigated our fair share of ups and downs, but I never saw this twist coming. Brian was a man brimming with affection, yet as the days went by, a change started to take shape. He became more withdrawn, taking on a more domineering attitude and displaying diminished warmth. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was just the stress of my work, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. As the sun sank beneath the horizon, Brian came home from work, exuding a peculiar energy that enveloped the atmosphere around him. He seemed strikingly joyful, yet there was an unsettling undertone in the way he looked at me. We enjoyed dinner together, as is our custom, and just as I was about to clear the table, he gestured for me to sit down. His tone held a gravity that demanded my attention, causing my heart to quicken as I understood this was far from a typical exchange. My thoughts have been consumed by contemplation. He began, his eyes drifting away from mine. I possess a significant revelation that I wish to convey to you. I nodded, a sense of anticipation lingering in the air, yet the words that flowed out were nothing like what I had imagined. He proposed a rather unconventional notion to invigorate our relationship, suggesting the inclusion of outsiders, which left me feeling uneasy. At first, I imagined a romantic getaway or maybe some therapy to rekindle our passion, but what he suggested was something completely unexpected. He mentioned, in a somewhat ambiguous manner, that he had set up a meeting for us with a few individuals. This weekend, their arrival is anticipated. I looked at him, bewildered by the path his mind was taking. Uncertainty enveloped me. Was he mocking me, or was this a cruel test? Nevertheless, the seriousness of his demeanor allowed for no uncertainty. An unsettling feeling churned in my stomach as a tide of nausea washed over me, engulfing my senses. "What do you mean by two men, precisely?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "They're friends of mine," he said, trying to keep a casual air, as if this were perfectly normal. He mentioned that we would be spending time with them, yet he offered no explanation as to why. Language eluded me. My hands shook as I fought to grasp his words. This is not the man I once vowed to love. This was not the person I had vowed to spend my life alongside. He discussed the idea of welcoming two unknown individuals into our home, into the sacred space of our marriage, as though it were a mere trifle. The very idea of it twisted my insides. However, beyond that, an overwhelming feeling of betrayal enveloped me. How could he ever suggest such a notion? "Brian, have you utterly abandoned your reason?" Finally, the words emerged, my voice quaking with a mix of astonishment and rage. "This does not reflect our true identity. What might drive you to—" However, he cut me off before I could finish my idea. "Emily, this is happening," he proclaimed, his voice slicing through the atmosphere. "Understanding this concept is crucial. This is a cherished longing of mine. An essential we need." The words that reached my ears were nearly beyond comprehension. My feelings for Brian were unmistakable, yet I struggled to understand the baffling motives that drove him to place me in such a degrading predicament. A power that loomed, ready to dismantle the intricate tapestry we had woven with such care. I resolutely conveyed my rejection, ensuring it was unmistakably understood that I would not move forward with it. I thought that would signify the end, that he would find his clarity again, and let go of the idea. However, I discovered that I was in error. As the days passed, Brian became increasingly isolated. He seldom participated in dialogue with me unless the subject was the plan. He started coming home late, and when I asked about where he had been, his answers were cloaked in uncertainty. The atmosphere surrounding us thickened, and the once comforting warmth of our home dissipated into a stifling silence. A feeling of confinement surrounded me, rendering me isolated and perplexed. How had I and our union come to be in this situation? As Friday drew near, a profound sense of dread settled deep within my chest. Brian was resolute that the meeting would go on, no matter my protests. I pondered leaving, imagining the moment of collecting my things and crossing the doorway, but still, I stayed put. With a heavy heart, I held on to the memory of the man I thought I knew, fostering a small glimmer of hope that this was just a fleeting phase, a hurdle we could conquer side by side. I found myself ensnared in a storm of feelings, reluctant to let go of the life we had crafted together, yet at the same time, unable to bear the thought of proceeding with this plan. Saturday night descended upon us in an instant. The men, asserting their friendship with Brian, made their entrance precisely at 8 p.m. I sat on the couch, my hands clenched in my lap, fighting the overwhelming desire to let the tears flow. Strange faces filled my living room, chatting with my husband as though they were old companions, their names remaining elusive to me. The air was thick with a silent tension, and I felt their eyes on me, watching, waiting. I yearned to disappear, to escape the boundaries of the home, and never look back, yet in that instant, Brian drew nearer, his hand softly placed on my knee. "Emily, it's time," he whispered gently. I felt frozen, my mind racing with the desire to escape, but my body refused to move. Brian's hand lay firmly on my knee, holding me steady in place. My eyes drifted away from him, and the two men seated opposite me were just as undeserving of my focus. My heart pounded in my chest, and the walls of the room seemed to close in on me. "Emily, please," Brian implored again, his voice falling to a near whisper, laced with urgency. His tone possessed a captivating quality that made me stop and reflect. It surpassed simple entreaty. It was a wail forged from the depths of despair. After days of searching, I finally caught a glimpse of fragility flickering in his eyes. What once seemed like a yearning for connection had transformed into a struggle for power and control, intertwined with an elusive depth that eluded my comprehension. Nevertheless, that did not make it fair. Everything about it felt amiss. "I can't do this, Brian," I finally whispered, my voice quivering. "This does not define who we are." He released a heavy sigh, reclining in his chair while massaging his temples, a clear sign of his mounting frustration. "Do you truly believe I long for this?" he murmured, his voice fading into the air, more a reflection of his own thoughts than a response to me. "This is meant for us, Emily. Are you unable to grasp that?" "No, you're not," I shot back, revealing a spark of determination. "This journey is for your own benefit. Brian, you have undergone a remarkable transformation. This issue has moved beyond our individual interests. It has evolved into a matter of supremacy." For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a shadow of guilt pass over his face. It disappeared just as quickly as it had come into existence. He tightened his jaw and rose to his feet, moving restlessly around the room like a lost soul navigating a maze. An overwhelming desire to reach out to him surged within me, to guide him back to the essence of who he once was, but I was left grappling with uncertainty on how to achieve that. We had traveled a great distance from our origins, and doubt hung in the air about whether we could ever find our way back. In the heavy silence that enveloped the space, one of the men, whom we shall call Derek, shattered the tranquility with a deliberate clearing of his throat. He seemed to sense the tension, yet an undeniable impatience hung in the air around him. "Listen," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "If this is not destined to be, maybe it's time for us to part ways." I looked up at him, and in that instant, I genuinely perceived him for the very first time. He did not meet my expectations. He radiated tranquility, embodying a presence that was simultaneously serene and courteous. His demeanor seemed to be more understanding than I had anticipated. I had imagined these men as hunters, but they revealed a different truth. They were simply people. In a manner that defies explanation, this only served to intensify the bewilderment enveloping the whole scenario. I felt no inclination to stay. I felt a hesitance to welcome the change that was taking shape. Still, the weight of it all, the time shared with Brian, the love we once embraced, the persistent wish that maybe, somehow, things could revert to what they used to be, kept me anchored. A shroud of uncertainty surrounded me, rendering me directionless. At that instant, I found myself trapped, engulfed by the burden of my own doubt. Then Brian spoke, his voice soft but firm. "Emily, if you choose to leave, it will be the end for us." The word hit me like a punch to the gut. My eyes locked onto him, a surge of incredulity enveloping me as I fought to comprehend the gravity of his statement. He had carved a line in the sand, and I stood at the crossroads, contemplating which side to claim as my own. Tears hovered at the brink of my lashes, but I held them at bay, resolute in my choice to shield my fragility from his gaze. "I've given you everything," he continued, his voice unwavering yet cold. "Provisions have been made for you. I have held you dear. This one unique request is all I desire in return." I stood up, my legs shaking but determined. "This isn't love, Brian," I murmured gently. "It feels as though I'm being coerced into something that contradicts my very essence." His eyes blazed with rage, but I stayed unmoved. I could not achieve this. I wouldn't opt for this. I turned toward the door, steeling myself for the inevitable outburst, for his hands to stretch out, for a desperate effort to stop my flight. Nevertheless, he opted against it. Instead, I caught his low murmur, a warning steeped in ominous undertones. "You're going to regret this." Perhaps I shall. Maybe leaving was a miscalculation. In that fleeting moment, it dawned on me that I had to depart. I stood firm against Brian and anyone else who tried to nudge me into a situation that left me feeling uncomfortable. As I stepped outside, the cool evening air caressed my face, stirring a curious mix of relief and heartbreak deep within me. My legs carried me down the street as my thoughts roiled like a storm. To what destination shall I embark on my journey? What journey was I about to undertake? What I had were only questions, intertwined with a deep sense of betrayal and profound sorrow. After what felt like an endless journey, I finally found myself standing before the recognizable facade of my best friend Olivia's home. I tapped softly on the door, my heart racing with the hope that she was within. As I opened the door and revealed my tear-streaked face, she held back any questions that might have spilled forth. She wrapped me in a comforting hug and guided me inside. In the days that followed, I found myself in Olivia's presence, wrestling with the tumult of events that had transpired. An overwhelming void surrounded me, as though a fragment of my soul had been ripped apart. While a wave of yearning for Brian washed over me, I recognized that going back was simply not feasible. The damage was permanent, and the broken fragments remained beyond mending. Brian tried to contact me multiple times, leaving a string of voicemails that swung from regretful to furious. He was a tempest of emotions, and I struggled to keep up with the rapid changes in his feelings. With each unanswered call, I allowed the silence to linger, until he finally gave up trying. As the months passed, I began the process of rebuilding my life, each step taken with intention and clarity. I took the step to file for divorce, fully conscious that our relationship had arrived at an irreversible juncture. The choice burdened my soul, a conflict unlike any I had encountered previously, yet in the end, it revealed itself to be the right path. It became unfeasible for me to stay in a relationship that forced me into manipulation and pushed me into situations that clashed with my fundamental values. From time to time, Brian drifts into my thoughts, and I reflect on the life we could have experienced together if fate had taken a different turn. Yet I have realized that I deserve so much more. I long for a love grounded in trust, respect, and shared understanding, not one tainted by control and manipulation.